building the design, building the product, doing the testing, and then redesign and define, and then handing over the complete product to the sales team. So any design is good, right? And it takes 2 years, fabulous. However, at the end of the years, it's always feel like there's something incomplete about that. And what I realized, and I realized that now, I intuitively understood it then, but I articulated it to myself many years later. And what I articulate now is that what they wanted to do at HP Labs was solve all of these complex problems, often wicked problems, as long as the solution was a piece of software. And that is where I had this penny drop moment when I realized that problems in a place like India especially are multidimensional, and I wanted to explore all these dimensions of design. So that's when I quit, and I moved to Delhi, and I set up this practice, Kiba Design, really as a space that was discipline agnostic, right? So the idea was to throw myself into the thick of things, to grapple with problems wherever they came from, whether they came from industry, they came from society, or entire communities, whatever it was, right? And then figure out what needed to be done. So really try and break down those problems to their core elements, really study it well, understand what needs to happen, and then work with other people. Very importantly, right? Work with people who had skills, who had knowledge that I didn't have, right? And I did that. I did that for 14 years. And in doing that, I picked up a lot of those skills. I picked up a lot of that knowledge. And all of those perspectives have helped me become the sort of designer I am today. And that's what I'm talking about today with you, right? So along the way, I've done a lot of work, in physical product design. I designed this geyser for Havells, which went on to win this India Design Mark, which was nice. I designed this rocking stool for children with autism and other neuroatypicalities, which would help them to regulate their emotions. That won an award with the Godrej Design Lab, which was nice, and so on and so forth. But the single most fulfilling experience that I've had in my time at Kiba was this engagement I had with the Planning Commission in 2012. You may know it as the Niti Aayog now, right? So I worked with them at that point with something called the National Innovation Council on design policy. So I had created a proposal which they liked, and they asked me to join. So I spent 6 months in the Planning Commission working alongside public servants and various other people. The Planning Commission is this incredible place where they tap into the brightest minds from industry. So you will have people on deputation from the Tatas, and all the other big design houses, the industry houses, and they will all be working with the government on various aspects of policy. So I worked alongside all of these people for 6 months, which was fabulous, learning. But also I had this opportunity to collaborate with people on a global scale, right, in defining what this policy should look like, and I'll talk about that in a while. Now, it wasn't all roses and and peaches and cream running Kiba. It is incredibly hard to run a design practice in a place like India, at least. You have to do everything. Like, you have to literally be the peon. You have to be the person who does business development. You have to do client servicing. You have to chase after clients for payments. It is soul crushing, right, to say the least, sometimes. It is also incredibly gratifying because you get to choose the kind of projects you want to work on. And also, what that means is you can take time off. Like, I just put everything on hold for 6 months and I spent time, with the government. So it really frees you up to do a lot of things. But I would say that it is the privilege of someone who's footloose and fancy-free and doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. So by 2019, I had 2 kids, and I think it was time for some stability. And around that time, the Boston Consulting Group reached out to me, and they needed somebody to lead strategic design for them in India and Asia Pacific. And I thought it was a good opportunity to do something that was at a higher level than I could achieve in terms of clients, right? Because once you reach a certain ticket size is your billing, right? A client would typically want to work with a strategy firm, right? Because the implications are in the multiple crores or dozens and hundreds of crores, right? So they want to work with an entire organization, not with a small design firm. So all of that came together really well, and I joined BCG. And I think the segue was a fairly smooth one because I'd already been consulting through my 14 years at Kiba. And the interesting thing about consulting is that you get to work on projects which are to do with digital transformation of entire companies and in some cases, entire countries. And I want to my last case study for today will come down to that, which is how do you kickstart tourism for a country. So just hang on, I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I wanted to put on the screen here is that the kinds of problems that I was dealing with now at BCG were the big picture problems, right? So how do you simplify car finance, right? Once you solve that for one company or one organization, it gets adopted across the industry, okay? How do you bring a pharma major into the health tech business? Now, according to by Indian law, pharma companies are not allowed to collect data on customers, right? Because, and especially, when you talk about medical professionals who are instrumental in prescribing their medicines. So how do you find a way that is legit and helps the pharma company deliver value to end users, right? So how do you do that? And it's a strategic problem. You can't just jump into designing a software, right, or a website or an app. You have to understand what the core problems are. You have to understand what the legal implications are. What is the policy around this, right? And the only reason I was able to do this at BCG was because I've had, at that point, I'd had a very varied background in understanding and dealing with different kinds of problems, right? So it really helps to throw yourself out of that comfort zone and deal with all kinds of problems because it gives you those multiple perspectives. All right. Now, BCG was great. However, at the end of 3 years, I started missing something, right, which is ownership of execution. Now, a consulting firm, by its very definition, consults on strategy, right? These are strategy consulting firms. So it's an incredible place where you get to work with incredibly bright people from across different disciplines, right? A lot of management consultants are there. You get a lot of technical consultants and so on. However, the engagement stops at the stage of articulating the design solution, right? We don't own the implementation of it. And sometimes once we had handed over the vision for the design solution, we went back a year later and saw what was implemented, and there was a chasm between the design intent and what was in the market. And at that point, I'd spent all of my career really owning design end to end, and I wanted to do that again. So I moved on and I joined Honeywell, and Honeywell has been absolutely incredible. It's for those of you who aren't familiar with the company, it's an industrials major. It's a giant, actually. I would say 70% of the infrastructure that powers our lives is powered by Honeywell. And that is not an exaggeration, right? Honeywell is in all kinds of things, from aerospace to industrials. And by industrials, I mean, powering everything from oil and natural gas to, various manufacturing processes, helping you track, shipments as they happen on a global scale. Pharma shipments, for instance, are very, they can be impacted hugely by changes in temperature, in humidity, all kinds of fluctuations. So how do you track all of that? How do you give feedback? So all of these data streams from buildings, from sustainability initiatives, all of these data streams come in, and my team works on the interfaces that help people make sense of all this data and then take action on it. So it's incredible work, and that's where I'm at now. All right, so moving on. Like I said, I've worked in a number of industries, right? So a lot of the major industries that you'll get a chance to work with, I've had my paws in there at some point or the other. I want to touch upon 3 lesser explored industries in general for the design field, right? And because what happens is when you graduate, typically I would say 95% of designers get lapped up by big industry, right? And that's also what we want to do, right? We want to join the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. So what tends to happen is some of the cultural aspect or the social aspect of what a designer can do and can contribute tends to get lost. Right? So I just want to touch upon a few things here. For instance, craft. Right? This is like